Yeah, so as Doug said, I'm really pleased to be back with you all again. I live in Bend, so I'm just down the road a ways. I'm the CEO of Bedhead and Business Websites. We do WordPress, we do accessibility, and we do Gravity Forms. We do a lot of stuff with Gravity Forms, and I really love working with Gravity Forms. But if you are so when we're working with clients, we really are, and when you're a site owner, when you're in the business of finding solutions, right? If you're a freelancer or an agency, you're selling solutions to clients, and you have to know what it's possible to do, right? You have to know what's realistic, what's achievable. And so in this webinar, I just want to outline for you some of the things that you can do with WordPress websites and you might not know about them and things that you might not know that you can do yet. So I'm going to talk tonight a lot about Gravity Forms, but you actually might be able to do a lot of the things that I'm just going to describe with a Ninja Forms or a WP Forms or other Forms plugins. But Gravity Forms is what our team uses and what I'm most familiar with. And I think Gravity Forms has the most extensible and certainly the largest ecosystem of third-party plugins. But as a lot of you all know, I'm concerned also about accessibility, and Gravity Forms has made some great efforts to be accessible in their form plugins. And we're going to talk more about all of that today. So what we're going to talk about tonight is kind of just an overview of Gravity Forms and their ecosystem, and maybe just even introducing you to some third-party plugins that you didn't know existed. Might give you some ideas for what you might be able to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about some building blocks for doing more complex things with forms, and that is tools within the form plugins themselves for leveling them up a notch or two. And then I'm going to just sort of describe 5 fairly complex implementations using Gravity Forms. And by that, I mean not just supercharged forms, but some projects in the more complex end that really become a web app, essentially. So everybody should be pretty familiar with using a form as a simple contact form, but actually forms can do a lot of powerful things if you want to take them to the next level. And right out of the box, Gravity Forms will do these things. You can export your entries as a CSV and then use them in all kinds of ways. You can take payments with not just Stripe, PayPal, and Square, but you can use all kinds of other payments, including some fairly small ones that we are not familiar with here in the States, but European and other payment processors. You can send data to CRMs and email platforms and cloud drives and Slack and via Zapier just about anywhere. You can register new users on your site, and you can register them at a variety of user role levels. You can create new post pages and custom post types in either published or draft status. You can do polls and quizzes and, of course, display all that info. You can, Gravity Forms allows you to capture partial entries and let the user save what they've done. If you have a really long form, save what they've done and get a link to come back and finish that entry later, which is really handy. You can use webhooks to send and receive data to external APIs. There are some product fields for light e-commerce. I wouldn't use it for a huge amount of e-commerce, but you certainly can put together a lot of things with products. You can upload images and files. You can put them in your posts even. You can take signatures. And with an HTML field, you can add pretty much any kind of small script to or whatever you want, really, in terms of to a Gravity Form. So it's actually pretty powerful. Gravity Forms themselves have over 40 official add-ons. And of course, those are available at different licensing levels. So if you want to take the Stripe payments add-on, you need the Stripe add-on, and you would have to look at what level of licensure is needed for getting the particular add-on that you need. There are also a large number of third-party add-ons, and here are 7 of my favorites. So Gravity View has now rebranded themselves as Gravity Kit, and fundamentally they developed as a plugin to display Gravity Forms data. So you get entries on your form, and you can display those entries in a variety of ways. But they will let you do even more with that. You can search and filter in the display, so you can display all the entries, and then you can search and filter those. You can do that both as the front end user, so you can, for instance, display a big entry of people in a directory of some kind, and then the user can filter them. But you can also filter which entries get displayed on the front end at all. You can do maps and location searching. You can import entries into Gravity Forms from a CSV. You can bulk edit entries, and you can do some math and calculations that are pretty awesome for being able to pull things together when you need to um, make some complex pieces work together. Gravity Flow is a plugin that lets you set up a workflow process with forms. And their classic example is a vacation request form that the employee fills out, and then it goes to their supervisor for an approval, and then finally to HR. Maybe it gets disapproved and goes back to the employee, but then comes back to HR. Then the employee gets notified when everything's all approved. And it includes a feature for email reminders that it remind a user that it's their turn to complete a step. And in my humble opinion, that nagging email is one of their better features for getting people to kind of keep moving through the process. Gravity Perks is a collection of more than 38 plugins that do very small but specific things, like limit the dates that are available on a date picker. For instance, say you only want your user to be able to pick a weekday and not a Saturday or Sunday. You can allow for conditional logic using dates. You can create nested forms where you have one child form inside a parent form. Their newest plugin put out is called Notification Scheduler, and it allows you to drip out email notifications like reminders, and it's actually pretty powerful, that scheduler. And then additionally on their site, the site for Gravity Perks, they have a ton of free custom code snippets. So sometimes you can uh, get in there and find a snippet when you're not ready to purchase the whole thing. I'd like to support those developers because they do some amazing things, but you can get some free snippets. That's a bit of code that you're going to put in your functions.php file. And so one of the examples that I started using early on for them was one to do inventory control. That is, sell only a specific number of a product. They've now developed that into one of their plugins, but you know, you can find a lot of really cool things to do with Gravity Forms on their site. Gravity PDF allows you to export a Gravity entry as a PDF file, and including styling that. You can make it look pretty much any way you want with some HTML in the PDF, and you can put that PDF together on the fly so that it goes out with the email notification on the form submission. Fillable PDFs, it allows you to take any fillable PDF. So that's a PDF. You sometimes see them have light blue fields. We're going to talk a little bit more about those later, but to take any fillable PDF, create a Gravity form, and then map the entry fields onto the fillable PDF so that you get a PDF that looks like somebody typed it out. Entry automation allows you to do a lot of things with entries. So you can schedule the export of the form entries as a CSV file. You can have it automatically emailed to someone. You can automatically delete specific fields so you're complying with GDPR. You know, like GDPR doesn't allow you to keep some information, so you can you know, delete those, auto delete those, and you can combine those. You can export the data and then you can auto delete it. So it's really a pretty handy tool that does a lot of nice things with entries. And then finally, JetSloth, I love the name of that company, JetSloth, makes bulk actions for Gravity Forms. So if you get a form that is fairly long or complex, it can get to be where it's hard to move fields or sections of fields around in the form accurately in the form editor or easily in the form editor. And so this plugin will help with that. It lets you copy one or more individual fields, just select them and move them up and down within a form, but it also lets you copy them from one form to another, and that can be super handy if you've got a bunch of settings that you want to maintain or a bunch of complex fields put together and you want to just copy them from one form to another without just duplicating the form. So I'm going to pause right there. I can't see any questions, but any questions about third party? I will say that, there are a lot of third party plugins for Gravity. And what you might want to do is all of these here, and there are dozens more, are what are called official certified plugins for Gravity Forms, and that's a good way to kind of evaluate when you're looking at a third-party plugin is to go to the Gravity Forms website, and there's a whole section of certified plugins there. You can find some that are a little sketchy, and so looking for those certified plugins is a good mark of something that's going to be quality. Did we have any questions about any of that so far?
I don't see any raised hands.
Excellent. Thanks, Marianne.
Okay. Yep. We're okay.
All right. So I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about building blocks for complex forms. And there are a few kind of conceptual building blocks for doing more complex things in Gravity Forms. And then they become even more powerful when you start to put those together. So one of those building blocks is pre-populating or automatically filling in fields on a form. And Gravity Forms offers you a number of ways to do this. The first way is through a query string. So if you look, if you're looking on the slide, everything after the question mark itself, and everything after that is the query string. So you would have the link to the form, but then you could put this little bit of snippet after it, and it would fill in the value that you've put there. So you set up the field that you want to pre-populate, and you give it a parameter name. And then after that, then you can use this query string, and it's kind of fun to play with that if you've never done that before, because it lets you do all kinds of really cool things with that. We'll talk about some of those later. But for example, maybe you have a lot of staff on your team, but you don't want to have or they're changing frequently. You don't want to have a drop down on the contact form with everyone's email. So you might set up your staff page with email Susie or email Bob, and each person's email would just take them to the contact form, but it's automatically pre-populated with Susie or Bob's email address. So it can be done with some really cool things. Gravity Forms used to be inserted on pages in shortcodes and now is with blocks, and both shortcode and blocks have some similar ways that you can set particular values for fields with parameters. So for instance, you might have the same form that you want to embed in various places, but you want to have some default values that are different for those those forms depending on where they're embedded. And you could use this pre-population, dynamically pre-populating to do that. It is also possible to dynamically populate with webhooks. I won't say too much about that. That's but just that it could be a very powerful tool if you want to use some webhooks to do that. And then finally, it is possible, and this is not so much in the you'll see the link down at the bottom for using dynamic population, but not on that documentation, is that you can use merge tags. So Gravity Forms, of course, has the little curly brace merge tags, and it is possible to pre-populate something like today's date or some user meta, like the user's email address, into a field using merge tags. And so, for instance, you might want to set you might want to pre-populate a date picker field. Say you're getting a signature on an acknowledgement, and you don't want to have the user mess around with post dating that. So you can pre-populate the date field with today's date, and then lock that field so that the user can't change it. So some nice ways that you can begin to use pre-populating fields. Another one is to use hidden and administrative fields. So these are fields that collect data in the form entry, but are not shown to the user. The user does not see these fields. So hidden fields hold the functionality on the front of the form, but they're not visible on the page. An administrative field is only visible and usable on the back end of the website when you're working in the WordPress admin. So you could, for instance, put a hidden field together with dynamic population. So say you want to track the landing page that a user is coming from when they go to fill out a specific form. So you could put a hidden field on the form for the source, and then you could use that query string method to set the link. So you might have a link on one page that says it's from the about page, and a link on another page that's from the landing page. And then you can pre-populate that source field depending on where they came from. But that would all be hidden from the user, only available to you in the entry of the site. So hidden and administrative fields we use hidden fields a lot more than administrative, but they can both have some good uses. And then finally, some people may be really familiar with this, but there's conditional logic. So this is where you can show and hide fields based on the user's input with the fields above. So for example, in this example here, I'm hiding the field titled main project contact name by default, and I will only show it if the user says directly above this that they are not the main contact. We use, this is the form that our project intake form, right? Are you the main contact for this project? We already have their email address. They say yes, then I don't worry about anything. If they say no, that main project contact pops up with the contact name and email address fields. We routinely use this for when we're doing registrations. We'll ask the user how many people are on your team, and then through conditional logic, we will display the data fields like name and email and role that are for exactly that many team members. Do note that conditional logic can use hidden fields that the user doesn't see. So if going back to that landing page example from before, if I know that somebody has come from landing page A and I want to show people who came from that page a special extra field but hide it from everyone else, I can set up that hidden field for the source, and then based on that field for conditional logic, I can show or hide other fields. Conditional logic can be very powerful, and with great power comes the great ability to become confused. So if your form starts to have a lot of conditional logic in it, it is very possible to start finding conflicts or start finding problems with that. So from the get-go, you want to do what you can to really keep the conditional logic as simple as possible. And sometimes, you back yourself into a corner where you have to do things. You have to show things you'd rather not hide, just because the conditional logic just can't go there, right? There are a lot of other building blocks, but these three: pre-populating, hidden fields, and conditional logic, those are a good start for getting started on doing some more complex things. I'm going to just share a couple of tips, and these are more just sort of like cognitive things to think about as you're building out more complex things. And the first is to think about reducing friction. And by that, I mean primarily hiding any unnecessary or unneeded fields. So in that example where I ask how many team members are there and I display exactly the number of fields they need, If there are only 2 people on your team, those people don't want to scroll down through all the possible fields for 10 team members and have those be empty. You want to just make that experience be a little nicer for them. And the other is to think about idiot proofing. It's, you know, you kind of have to have a dim view of human nature when you're doing these things. You have to assume that if people can mess it up, they will. And so you always want to be looking for ways that your instructions are ambiguous or vague, that people won't know what to do, or where you are allowing people to go free form may create difficulties later for the people who are dealing with the data. So for instance, if you're doing a registration form and you're taking dietary preferences, if you want to put that into forced choices with radio buttons so that people have to choose, they're choosing no limitations, vegan, vegetarian, dietary, no dairy, whatever those all are. Because if you just allow people to write in whatever they want, somebody will write in veg, VEG. And then somebody from the planning team has to go contact them and ask, did they mean vegetarian or vegan? Right? And so you also want to think about how people might cheat the system. And so in general, you want to remove those opportunities as well. If there's early and late pricing, you're going to make sure that people only see either the early or the late pricing and not both, and letting them choose, right? Then the second tip is to beware of caching and forms. So whether it's site caching with something like WP Rocket or another caching plugin, or it's server level caching like Varnish or Nginx or something like that, caching can create problems for forms. Now, it in particular can cause problems with pre-populating forms when we've done some pre-populating of fields, but it can also unexpectedly cache other users' inputted data. So person 1 comes, fills out your form, caching plugin captures that, puts it in. Person 2 may come, they may put in their things, but just before it submits, it substitutes person 1's data. So that's a problem, especially if you're going to take payments on something. So best practice is not to cache forms at all. So if you only have a few forms on your website, then it's easy to either, whether that's server caching or in a plugin, you want to just exclude those URLs. So you just find the URL of your form and you put it in the plugin to excuse, or on the server to exclude that. If you have a lot of forms on your site, so for instance, some of our clients do a lot of event registrations, so Gravity forms are going up and down a lot. You might want to use a plugin, the plugin Fresh Forms for Gravity, to exclude all forms from caching. So that plugin will exclude all the Gravity forms from caching. Now, you want to be aware that that plugin does not play nice with Breeze plugin at Cloudways, because the Breeze plugin doesn't support the do not cache constant, and there are some ways around that. We are at Cloudways, and Breeze is on some of our sites, but we do some workarounds with header cookies, and I'm happy to share that. It's much more technical, but I'm happy to share that if somebody wants to reach out for me. You might also want to look at the Gravity Perks does a cache buster plugin, and it's supposed to cache to bust the cache for, which means not cache any form, just the form on a page, but not the rest of the page. So if you have a form that is on a more complex page, but the form is there, where you would want to cache the rest of it, just for the performance piece, you might want to check out the Cache Buster plugin. Now, you want to be super careful when you're doing these exclusions, whether you're doing the plugins or whether you're auto excluding somehow. If you have a Gravity form on every page of your website, say a small email sign up in the footer, and you start to exclude every Gravity form, then you're excluding every page from caching. And that is sort of defeating the purpose. So you'll want to think ahead about where the caching is and how you do that. I'm going to pause briefly for questions again, and Doug or Marianne will give me a heads up if there's.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of questions, which is
Yeah.
really good. So I get what you're saying is that if you have a gravity form on a large page, you don't want to not cache the entire page.
Right.
So this one that you're talking about, which is the cache buster for
Yes.
gravity perks, that'll just make sure that the
That's
actual form is not cached and everything else is fine.
That's my understanding. We haven't done a lot with that because we don't tend to have that sort of a situation where we've got other things that really ought to be cached. We tend to have it's a whole page, the form is just
Mhm.
all on one page. But yeah, I would give it a go.
Yeah, but I know you can set Ajax for a form. That doesn't have any bearing on the caching though.
No.
Okay. Yeah, and just a little FYI, I really love the admin area in the gravity forms we're using because sometimes I have complex forms and I just need to talk it out and put it in the admin so I can remember, okay, what was I doing here? Oh, yes, I get it. So that's a very handy tool for me.
Yes, it is. It's very handy.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to kind of move on.
I have a question.
Oh, no, one more question. I'm sorry.
Well, I might as well ask a question. So going back a little tiny bit, you talked um, about having a date just come in automatically.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about how to do that so that it's just automatically there and it can't be changed?
Yeah, you set a default value and you use the merge tag, and there's a merge tag for today's date. I'm not remember what it is, but you can select different formatting of it depending on how you want the date to appear. But it's a little merge tag, so you would go to the Gravity Forms website, find the merge tag for today's date, and then you're going to make that the default value. And then what we do, and a lot of people just do it and leave that at that, but I like to lock down the uh, field so that the user can't edit that. And the way to do that, and there are other ways to do that. That's a Gravity Perks plugin, is to and I can't remember what they call it now, but it basically locks the field. The user can't edit the field. And I'll show you one of our implementations has some of that, and but we occasionally want to do that.
Yeah, so Bet, I do that because I actually generate invoices, send them out,
Yes.
and then they use the the whole thing with the putting these links in at the end, and actually autofill like the invoice and the amount, and we can
Yeah.
set those to read only with the
Yes, read only. That's it.
Yeah.
Read only.
Yeah.
And so yeah, read only is the plugin, and it's very handy. It's very handy.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question, Marianne?
Yes, it does.
All right.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to sort of start walking through some of our more complex implementations, kind of building on what we've talked about already. The first is an event registration. Another is a fillable PDF. Then a multi-step, multi-decision maker process for a registration system. An API integration for insurance estimates, and then finally displaying submitted data in a DEI reporting system with displaying submitted data. So I'm gonna, most of these are in an increasing order of complexity. So the first is an event registration, which sounds like it's easy, but and I didn't have, I'm sorry, this is a wall of text, but it's hard to convey in quickly the complexity of this. So let me just tell you about this event. I don't have any pieces of the forms, but this is all doable with the form. And if you have questions about how we did any one particular thing, you can ask. So this event is a 3-day in-person event for a national nonprofit for which most people will stay overnight. There are 3 categories of registrants: youth under 18, young adults 18 to 30, and adults, all who get different pricing levels. If someone chooses the under 18 categories, there are more than 20 additional fields that are shown only to them with conditional logic, and actually it's showing to their parents, really. Everything from health history to emergency contacts to permission slips to code of conduct acknowledgement. registrants over the age of 18 have fields that are shown only to them, offering them the option to add children ages 5 to 12 for meals with the assumption that those children will stay in the room with them. Children under 5 are free for meals. Young adults and adults can also choose commuter options with 2 different meal plans. So one of the questions early on in the form is whether you will be staying overnight or being a commuter. Those people who indicate that they're staying on site are offered a choice of double or single rooms at 2 different pricing levels. All of the on-site housing rooms have quantities limited with inventory control to prevent overselling. So there are only so many double rooms, only so many single rooms to prevent overselling. All of the registration types and rooms have, all of the types and all of the rooms have early, regular, and late pricing based on date. So all of the product fields for this form are multiplied by 3 and have conditional logic that only allows them to be displayed during the current window of pricing for when it's time for that price. Information on the form is collected about food allergies, and if food allergies are indicated, a special notification with limited info about that goes to the dietary director. There's an invitation on the form to volunteer at the event with selections about what you'd like to do. And if the person indicates they want to volunteer, then a special notification goes to the volunteer coordinator. A customized and branded email notification, kind of receipt, essentially goes to the registrant, indicating their selections from all the options available. And they also get a reminder 3 days before the event with directions to the venue and instructions for checking in. There's a weekly CSV export of all the registrations so far that is emailed to the registrar and 3 other people. So you can see things for an event can get complex very quickly, and there are a lot of moving parts for some event registrations. And while there are some ways that registrations for events can be out of the box, a simple Eventbrite kind of form, right, can happen. If an organization needs much customization at all, then this sort of a custom form might be a better route. And I will also add, we see this type of fairly complex registrations for events that are either national, but also events that have a long history of taking PDF, registration forms. They want to, on those PDF registration forms for time immemorial, they've allowed all these different complexities of things, right? And they want to continue to offer those to their client base. So very interesting kind of piece. So let's talk about fillable PDF. So here's an example using a fillable PDF. If you are a parent, you have no doubt filled out a form like this at one time or another. This is the required pre-admission health history form used by every daycare in the state of California. This is a form required by the state. And it's available as a fillable PDF. You can kind of see the faint blue fields there for where the text is going to go. The fillable PDFs plugins for Gravity Forms does this really cool thing that I did not mention before, and that is it'll allow you to take this pre-existing fillable PDF and you can upload it into your site, and it will rough out all of the fields that you might need for that form, including the field titles. Now, it's making some best guesses, so it's not always right. But this is a 3-page form, right? If you printed it out, it would be 3 pages, 8.5 by 11. So you can imagine how much time saving that is for putting it together. It does all of the checkboxes as individual checkboxes, so you have to get rid of all of them and kind of collapse those all together, for example. But it's huge time saving. So you you create basically a gravity form that has all of the fields that would need to be put into this form. And so, you might get a form that ends up, this is the front end of this form, the child's name and all of their info and the parents' names and info, and goes on and on and on, right? So you get this field and this form, and the parent fills it all out, including a signature. And when they click submit, then the fields of the gravity form are mapped onto the fillable PDF and saved as a part of the entry so that it looks something like this, right? It's typewritten. So part of one of the reasons why this daycare employee, contracted with us to do this was they were having COVID, right? They needed to have a way for people to submit all their forms without having them to troop into the office. But B, also, they were delighted at how much more readable everything was, right? They didn't have to try to figure out people's handwriting craziness. So um, you can see how this would really make this together. This particular client had us keep, there are 6 or 8 forms that the state of California requires. It would have been possible for us to create one long gravity form and then map it to the various different fillable PDFs. But this particular client wanted us to keep these all very separate. So that's what we did for them. And then this filled PDF is attached to 2 email notifications. One of them goes to the facility, and the other goes to the parent as a copy for them. So really super cool way that you can begin to fill out fillable PDFs for all kinds of things. Using Gravity Flow, you can create a workflow process for multi-step, multi-user requirements, right? So Gravity Flow's base example is that employee requesting vacation. We utilized Gravity Flow to set up a multi-user process for a cross-country running camp for high school students. So this particular client was limiting attendees based on a particular association of running clubs in their area. So the coaches of the running clubs were the ones to initiate the registration. So some of the clubs were paying for the camp as out of the club treasury. Others were having parents pay. So the coach initiates the registration, indicates whether the parent or the club is going to pay, provides the payor's email address, which was not always the coach themselves. Sometimes it was the treasurer if the club was paying, and then also the parent's email address. So let's say the coach registers Julie Freeman. So coach puts her info in, gives some preliminary information about Julie, and lets us know who is going to be the payor, what that person's email is. So the next step of the process is that the paying party gets an email with a link for them to come to the website and pay for Julie. Now, the paying party could be her parent, or it might be somebody from the running club. And that person will continue to get an email reminder to come and pay for Julie every 7 days until that registration, that payment is complete. After the payment is completed, then the parent or guardian gets a notification that they must come to the website and fill out a separate health and permissions form for their that includes a signature. So they get a reminder every 7 days, come and fill out this form, come and fill out this form. So we've gotten the payment, we got some little initial information, we've gotten some a payment, and now we've filled in from what the coach put in, we filled in on the parent form. They can override that because maybe the coach misspelled the kid's name, or all kinds of stuff like that. Or they're great in school, and so now we've got the parent filling out their form. They're filling all of that out. They keep getting that reminder. Once the parent or guardian fills out the form, then it's complete, and the email notification goes to the coach, the camp staff, and the parent that the registration is complete. Now, when we set this up, none of us really thought about that parents, more than a few parents were going to leave things until the last minute. So in the last 2 weeks before the camp started, we ended up bumping up that nag email on the parents to fill out the health and permissions to every 24 hours. And even then, they had parents that showed up to fill out the form on site. It's crazy. All right. Using APIs. So it's possible to connect a Gravity form to just about any external platform that has an open API. And this, of course, requires some custom coding. It's not something out of the box with Gravity Forms. One of our clients is Mennonite Insurance Services, and they offer insurance to members of Mennonite and related churches in California and Oregon. And while we have other Gravity Forms on this website for someone to get a quote, and that's technical language in the insurance industry, a quote means that you have enough information that they're going to give you a firm price, and that's the offer for the policy, the firm price. And what they actually wanted us to build in this case was not a firm quote, but an estimate. And in the insurance industry, the estimate is not binding. It's simply giving you that ballpark estimate of with enough information to get an approximation of what your premium is going to be. So the underwriting platform that this client uses to build out both their quotes and estimates has an API that we were able to tie into. So the user can come to the website, fill out some information, where their property is located, how much evaluation on it, the year it was built, and then get an estimate of how much their premium would be. And then if they like that, they can put in their name and email, and then the Mennonite insurance staff will be in touch to contact them about moving forward with a more informal quote. But the thing to note about this is this implementation both sends data to the external platform. It's sending data about the property and its location and its value, and then it pulls data from the external platform into the website, so the estimate. So really kind of you can push and pull information using the API. Now, of course, the receiving end of that API on the website really doesn't have anything more to do with Gravity Forms, except that there's a button there that says, would you like to be contacted about this? And then that pops up the form with the hidden fields for name and email that were there before. Now they can put those in. So there are all kinds of use cases for setting up external APIs using Gravity Forms, and anytime pretty much that you'd want to collect information and send it somewhere, or send data somewhere and return something. But I would say, that's a lot of the Gravity Forms add-ons that are already there, right? There's a HubSpot add-on, there's a Slack add-on, any of those kinds of things, right, are already add-ons. So, and of course, Zapier, if you have a way to do something with Zapier, it's probably going to be less costly or less labor intensive to use a Gravity Forms add-on or Zapier if it already exists. But in this case, of course, this is pretty niche and proprietary, so it's something that had to be custom built. All right, our piece de la resistance. So this is our DEI reporting system. Our client is the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. They are a mainline Christian denomination in the United States and Canada, and they have some pretty serious commitments to a wide diversity of inclusion on their boards and committees. And we built out this reporting system to help their oversight teams keep track of that. We're using Gravity Forms, and especially their polling add-on. That's what gives us those fancy percentage bars. And we're using Gravity View to display entries, along with custom user roles that allow the board chair, the people who are logging in to report, they only get to see their own data. Now, all of my screenshots are a little dated because, of course, we can't show you live data on this site for privacy stuff. But here's how it works. So GNC stands for General Nominating Committee, and that's the group that's charged with overseeing diversity and inclusion. And the Christian Board of Publication is one of their boards or ministry units that they want to make sure has a diverse membership on the board. So the executive or the staff who are making the reporting into this system is given a user account in WordPress with a custom user role that's tied only to this particular board. So when this user logs in, they are redirected specifically to this landing page just for their board or committee. They don't get to see anybody else's pages. They don't get to edit anybody else's data. They only go here. And this is actually part of a larger site where we have a lot of custom user roles going on that control not only which pages someone can see or go to, but also what appears in the sidebar. And so for this particular user, the level of users, they only get to see contact us, and that comes to us as a support request pretty much, and they get to see this landing page. So at the top of the page is a box. You can see this light box with the gray bar at the bottom, is the information displayed about this particular board. This is one entry into the Gravity form on the website titled Board Info Form. Right? This is one entry of a site-wide form. It's displayed via Gravity View and filtered so that it only displays this one entry. Notice the Edit Entry link in the lower right-hand corner. Gravity View lets us set up a view, and if we set it up, configure it, we can say you can let the author of an entry edit it. So this particular user is the author of this entry. Now, and they are given permission to edit it. Now, they're not the original author of the entry. The entry was created by somebody else, and then authorship was assigned to them in the dashboard. So this is what the Gravity View shortcode. We're still using Gravity View shortcodes when we built this out about a year ago, just so that we can get the real fine-tuned pieces. So you'll see Gravity View shortcode. The ID is the ID of the view in Gravity View. Then we're telling it, search for the field ID 1 in the Gravity form. And you're going to look for and display only the entries that have the value in field ID 1 of Christian Board of Publication. We have that one entry, right? Now, if that person clicked on the edit entry link, this is what it would look like for them. It is a front-end editing experience of editing a form. Now, you might not be able to tell from the, well, maybe it's a little bigger on your screen, but that top field where it says the ministry name, that's a drop down that is read-only to the user. It's not editable by the user. It's only able to be edited in the WordPress dashboard by an administrator level user. Now, the part of the reason for this is, remember, we're filtering for all of these. And we can't let this user abbreviate something or change the wording or change the capitalization of any of it. It all has to match exactly. So we're making that a field that's not editable by the user. For the ministry info form, they only get to see this, and they can change the executive name, they can change the staff contact, they could change that. And by the way, if they clicked on, this is the open blank, I took this screenshot way after the fact, but if I opened it up in their website, it would already be pre-populated with all of the stuff that's already in the entry. So it's already an existing entry, and then you're just editing what's already there. This is taking a view of that form because I didn't remember to take that before we launched it with the client. Okay, and then when they click that update page at the bottom of the field, they're redirected back to their landing page again. Immediately below that board information box at the top of the landing page appears an option to search all of the people serving on this board or committee. Now, in this example, you can see the two test entries that are here, but there might be 30 or 40 people on this committee. And so they need to be able to search and find them. Now, all of those people, it will load all of those people on the page. It will be one giant long thing. You can set it up for pagination, but we were a little worried about how some of this going back and forth might work. So we've left the pagination pagination so that you're going to see all 30 or 40 people if that's how many are on your committee. Now, the search, one of the things to note is that this search box will only show them the entries that are tied to their particular board or committee. So if you search for here, you're only going to see people who are a part of this Christian Board of Publication. Each individual board member entry can be edited. So you can see the edit entry link there, same edit entry link. And so you, for instance, they may have changed their age grouping. Now they're over 59, and so they've moved up into an age grouping, or their length of service has obviously changed if they're staying on in the committee. And so when an entry is opened up for entry, it can also be deleted. And we want to make that so that the person can report when, let the oversight team know when somebody goes off the team, when new people come on. So people can be added through the new button at the bottom, but then they can also be deleted. So here is what the shortcode for this particular view looks like. So again, this is a Gravity view, but it includes the search box and all of the individual entries. So it's telling the view is to search the individual member ID, the membership form for field ID 12, and in that field, only return the ones that show Christian Board of Publication. Okay. And again, the new nominee info at the bottom. Underneath all of that individual, so we've had the board info at the top. Now we've got the individual board member data, and underneath that we've got bar charts that are showing the percentages in each category of all that demographic data on the individual board member, their age, their gender, how long they've been on the board, what region of the country they're from. All of that is created with Gravity Forms polling add-on, and this allows us to display underneath those individual entries the bar graphs accumulated for each individual committee. So on that landing page, these bar graphs are only the percentages for this particular board or ministry. Now to do that, we had to do a wee bit of a hack on the Gravity Forms polls plugin. And unfortunately, because of the way things are constructed, it has to be done in the plugin itself, which could get overwritten, already has been at least once. So there's some extensive documentation we have about how to fix this if it gets, overwritten again. And I try really, really hard never ever to do this just because of that. I think in, 14 years of WordPress, I've done it twice. This is one of them. But it's important to note why we did that. Because the individual board member data is all contained in one Gravity form site-wide. So there's this board or committee, and all of their members are entries in the Gravity form, but another board or committee and all of their members are individual entries in the same Gravity form. Because of that, we can also display for the high-level oversight administrators a bar chart that shows the demographic percentages over all of the boards and committees, which is invaluable to them. Before we built this out for them, they were calculating all of those percentages by hand. Here's the shortcode for putting that in. This is, again, the Gravity Forms, the polls display, and so we're telling it to display the form ID and the results, but we're also telling it to search for field 12 and only show the Christian Board of Christian Education. So if you wanted to see what this looked like, this page, the whole page looks like, just in the terms of the blocks, it looks like this, right? There's the form at the top for the whole the ministry itself information. There's the view with the search bar and the individual's information. There's a button that goes straight over to the individual information form, but it has a query string added onto it so that this button on the Christian Board of Publication automatically pre-populates that that field 12 so that we know that it's that and doesn't let the user change it. And then finally at the bottom where we're displaying that polling data. So really kind of, I think, pretty cool putting all that together. And really, it sort of borders on a web app at that point, right? All of those pieces together.
Mhm.
If you are, and that's the end of my implementations. I'll just say, if you're looking for help with Gravity Forms, and you have a question that falls outside of support, I would say that, well, first of all, Gravity Forms and all of these third-party plugins have some amazing support among them for the most part. But if you have a question that, even things that fall into the how might I do this sort of a question, or is it possible kind of question, you might want to check out the Facebook user group for Gravity Forms. It's called Gravity Forms and Certified Add-ons. So all those certified add-ons we talked about that are there, and there's just some really helpful folks there that you can bounce some ideas off of and get some suggestions. I make use of those too, because there's just so much to know. There's no way to know it all, but you can certainly go and get some. Some people are much stronger on the custom coding. Other people are stronger on the UX of the forms and how to tie things together. And you just get some great help there. So, and that's it for me. And I'm happy to keep talking and take some questions and show I have to get out of all of that and figure out how to stop sharing my screen. Oh, it's over on the other screen. There we go.
There we go. Bet this is pretty amazing, I have to say. I thought I
Yeah,
knew
you
stuff.
told me you were a Gravity Forms person.
Yeah, I thought I knew stuff, but
okay, so tell me one thing that you just knew that you learned.
yeah, more than one.
Oh,
It's just I know I haven't really used too much of the add-ons. I have used Gravity Perks, but I didn't realize the complexity and what you can do with all the other, possibilities, especially on the PDF side. That was really something.
cool.
That was great.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, other questions? Yeah, maybe.
I have a question. I don't see anybody else with their hands up, but I have a question. So I've had clients before ask me about fillable PDFs, and I kind of shied them on because they basically wanted me to create the fillable PDF for them. And so I said, let's just use a Gravity form. You'll get that, But if they already give you a fillable PDF, I mean, making those connect, that seems really.
Well, I'll say there is a little bit of work to it. So even those state forms, when you get them, they often are not, they're not labeled properly a lot of times. And so you do have to go in and edit the PDF, the fillable PDF, before you can even get started sometimes. So for whatever that's worth, just know that it's not for the faint of heart in terms of putting that all together. But once you get that together and the form is there, it's not too hard to put it together. There are a few places where you really end up, when you're mapping it, using the merge tags for things a little bit. And there are some times when you don't get and I think some of this is coming as the plugin developer really works at kind of, the next iteration or the next things. You don't always get a fine-tuned control of how big the font is, right? So sometimes it seems like if it's trying to fit in all of the text. And so if it's trying to do that, sometimes one can be teeny tiny little print because you had a lot of text in a small box, and others are big because there was not much text and it was a bigger line and that kind of stuff. So.
Okay.
But I think I wouldn't tell somebody to start over with a fillable PDF. You're just going to use Gravity PDFs and then generate the PDFs from the form.
Okay. Now I know that's possible.
Yeah, and there are, and I'll say, I will. This is not a bid for me. You can find people to contract some of this stuff out to, like in that Facebook group. So there are people that hang out there, and like any of this stuff that we've been talking about that's more complex. If you need to do an API integration or whatever, and that's kind of beyond you, and that's fine. You can find people just to hire to do those little things and get you going.
That's great, because yeah, it's not something I need to do very often, and I can just have a specialist handle it.
Yep.
Yeah. So Bet, one question, can you talk a little bit about the accessibility for Gravity Forms? I know that's something that you
Yeah.
specialize in, so.
Yeah, so form accessibility can be tough because you need to be able to the person needs to be able to tab into the form, and generally that works okay. They need to know when a form is when a field is required, and the screen reader, if you're using the asterisks, that's not always announcing. It's not always saying required. It just says at star blah 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 blah. And so you're then depending if they've jumped into the form and haven't read that star equals required. You didn't tell them that. That's a problem. So some of the newer stuff just announces that it's required. And then there are all the correct ARIA labels are on them, on the forms for Gravity Forms out of the box. And then they will, what I really like about it is when you've made choices about your forms, they will, and you try to save them, they will come up with a little pop-up that says, these things about your form might make it less accessible. Do you want to reconsider that?
Mm.
And which I like. And and the error reporting, right? If there's a problem that with the form, the screen reader needs to tell like what the problem is, right? And so if all it does is just make it pink, that's a problem, right? Because the screen reader didn't announce it, and people who are colorblind might have problems depending on the background of your website. So yeah, Gravity Forms I think does I think is ahead. I think the other ones are coming along. The other form plugins are coming along, but I do think Gravity Forms really intentionally spent some time on their version 2.5 was when they released a lot of that. So
Yeah, I found that Gravity Forms was hard to style because the CSS was so wonky at the beginning, and now with 2.5 and especially 2.6, it's much, much easier to style.
yes, Gravity Form. I
Thank you.
used to. That would be one of my on that Facebook group where I lurk around and try to help people once in a while. I had like 2 or 3 links. Like here's the CSS targeting crib sheet. here's the here's the it was kind of hard.
Yeah, but yeah.
Cool.
I see a question in chat. It says confirmations can be set to a page or redirect, but can they be set to a custom post type somehow?
Sure. Why couldn't you just you mean redirect to an entry of that?
I don't know. It's
yeah. Let me. So I don't know what the SEO implementation of using a redirect versus send to a page is.
Oh, that's SEO. I don't know, but you can certainly send them to a URL, and it could be, like an event plugin makes a custom post type essentially.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing right now. But I was just I was looking for if there was an easy way to do it. Well, an easy way. I could write code to do it if there's code that's.
Well, but why wouldn't you want to just use the URL to the, like you've got your URL domain.com/events/my event title. That's your URL, and you just would redirect them to that.
That's what I'm using currently. I just wasn't sure if there was like an SEO advantage one way or the other.
I can't speak to the SEO. That's not my.
I wouldn't imagine SEO is a big deal for submitting a form.
This is the confirmation page too.
Which is after that, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm curious what other new stuff people learned. If people don't have questions, what other new thing did you discover tonight?
I've built a form that lets you edit entries, and I built the whole ability to edit it myself.
Yeah.
And after watching this, I should have used Gravity View. By the sound of it, it looks so much better. Yeah.
Well, I've done that too. You reinvent the wheel, and then after you're all done, you've discovered, oh, I could have saved a lot of time and energy doing. Yeah.
I had a form where I had to build a kind of a repeater,
Yes.
asking about how many children a family had, and you just want to have a stack of, what do you think? Maybe 3, 4, 5, 10, and you could just hit one at a time, and I use Gravity View for that. Is that something that Gravity Forms has built in now, or is it?
No, but the Gravity Perks
Yeah,
parent-child form will let you do that.
yeah,
So you can do what's called a nested form. So we built out a thing for an insurance company where they were going to be onboarding for commercial insurance. They're going to be onboarding a company's vehicles, right? So we have all the parent, all in the parent form is all the information about the company, and then it says vehicle, and then it's going to, description or make, model, VIN, whatever, and then there's just a little plus button and you can add another one. Now, that said, sometimes those things do not come out looking pretty in the CSV exports. So if it's, and sometimes it's really hard to send that data other places, because if you're in a regular form and you're taking somebody's email address and you're going to send that to and their name to your CRM, those are there, but you can't plan ahead that they're going to have 3 or 5 or 10 children, right? To know how many to send. And then you've got to send them all to the same level somehow. It gets complex. That's when you hire Radley to do custom coding.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I was able to use the Gravity Forms and Gravity View for a client who has various instructors in these online classes, and people can pick the class, and if they want to have like a special conference with somebody to come out and talk to them specifically, they can select from various things. It actually worked really smoothly, and the teachers can sign themselves up. The owner of the site gets to approve them or not. I mean, it wasn't that difficult to do. It was, and I think I contacted them once for support, and Gravity View was just like,
Oh, they're amazing.
they were great. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Well,
really good.
even Gravity Forms, their support is top notch. It's just the best. Then they're fast too, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really are good.
Marion,
So-
we built out one time. We've used Gravity View for like directories. So we have actually 2 clients that are doing to manage an online membership system. So we have WooCommerce memberships and subscriptions to manage the payment pieces and the membership roles. Then we use Gravity Forms for WooCommerce for the form that takes all of their data. Then we have Gravity View that only displays them in the membership directory if they're a current customer and not just a subscriber. So the minute their membership expires, they are removed. And it's all set up on a map, so you can search for, zip code for somebody near you. And
So,
What additional things are you using? Just Gravity Forms and Gravity View, or anything else on that?
on that membership system,
Mm-hmm.
so it's WooCommerce memberships and WooCommerce subscriptions. And then Gravity Forms for WooCommerce is a third party. That's Lucas Stark. He's the so you make a Gravity form and then you can tie it to a WooCommerce product.
Right. I've used that too.
And then we're using Gravity View to do the displays. So.
Okay.
Bet, is your slide deck available? Or is
I'll make it available.
Okay.
I'll get it to you.
Yeah,
after we
actually
sign
just
off.
pop it into the chat, and then just if that's possible.
I should say I am using
it.
Gravity Forms for WooCommerce for a membership site also.
Yeah.
And yeah, it works really slick. You just, in the products, once you add that little plugin, the Gravity Forms for WooCommerce, in the products, there'll be a place where you can link a product to a form, and it just worked really easily for this client.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and also thank you, Eagle, for dropping in some of those URLs for some of the add-ons, which is good.
Yeah, that was great. That was helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, what did you drop in? Oh, let's see.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
you use that
actually
in the
the
chat.
Oh, merge tags, excellent. And some of the documentation is pretty good on Gravity Forms. That's, I gotta say. Gravity Kit, yeah, that's all
the
awesome.
merge tags one's actually pretty cool. They got like I've never seen all these different things you could do.
It's pretty amazing, right? I feel like, and some days I feel like I just the tip of the iceberg for some of the
Yeah.
stuff that we do. So sorry, I'm fumbling around a little bit on my second screen.
Well, you can send it to me later. We can just put it in the comments on the event page for Meetup.
Oh, I'm getting close,
Oh, okay.
but now I gotta drag it over. Oops. Oh no, I know what I need to do. Let's see. I'm gonna make it, if it's okay if it's like a OneDrive link.
Or
Sorry, what was that?
It's
For
a
the slides?
OneDrive link. Yeah,
Mhm.
there we go.
Great.
I didn't think ahead about that. Sorry. Cool. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm really, what other kinds of new things that people,
Hmm.
if
I-
you want to keep chatting, because I'm kind of
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, I'm always, it's
know,
always kind of fun to see what people,
Can I ask you about, there's I think it's by either Gravity Perks or Gravity View. They have a plugin. It's called Gravity Forms No Spam plugin. And I've
yeah.
been using it because it just, no spam gets through. Sometimes I'm a little worried that no content necessarily gets through. So you have to
Legitimate
worry
ones aren't
about-
getting through.
Yeah, but it's absolutely great, because I've had to, I didn't have this, and it's not for comments or anything like that. It's for any form.
Yeah.
And you would see, they get about 2 or 3, spams a day. Now they're getting about 1 or 2 a month. which is-
Well,
So, and
we
they're-
haven't, I do occasionally get spam stuff or see spam stuff in client sites, but not all that much. We enable the,
yeah, that's it in the chat. Thanks, Dougie.
yeah, there you go. We enable the Akismet, and then, just try to be pretty good about making sure that when you get a spam entry, that you label it as spam, and that teaches the Akismet filter pretty
It-
quickly.
Isn't that for comments only, or is that for any
No,
form?
there's an Akismet integration for Gravity Forms. It's
Okay.
right in the settings for Gravity Forms itself.
Okay.
It's not on an individual form. It's on the
Okay.
settings for Gravity Form itself.
Okay.
Well, and
So if you
actually,
have
there's even an official add-on now that lets you fine tune it further.
There you go.
Hmm.
Excellent. Yeah, there's just really, really so many cool things, really.
Eagle, what is this docs gravityforms.com list field that you just put in?
Those are CSS selectors that you can use to style the fields in different ways.
Thank you.
Some of them are outdated because now you can do columns and stuff in the form builder itself, whereas before you had to use the CSS selectors if you wanted to put fields side by side. But now you can just do that right in the form builder.
Yeah, so handy.
Yeah, if you have if you have older forms, this is the one that I always used to send people, was the targeting examples. Right, so you get the selectors, but sometimes just having the examples of how they go together can be super helpful.
Yeah, that helps too.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Gravity Forms has great documentation as well as support.
They really do. And they're really my big complaint is that when I log in to do something, they keep showing those stupid sales pop-ups to me. And that's my big complaint.
So many plugins do that.
I know. But it's kind of like, look, I already buy your license. Why are you? It can't be that hard to just turn that thing off for logged in users.
There is a plugin to turn off notifications, though.
Yeah, but I
Yes.
don't want all of them to go off. I don't want. I want to know if I'm going to get a coupon on this cool new thing I'm looking at, right? So. But,
Can't have it all.
Can't have it all. Exactly. Can't have it all. Well, I'm good to just hang out. But if people want to have questions about Gravity Forms or later think of something, don't hesitate to reach out either via Twitter or the Facebook user group for Gravity Forms. We'd be glad to chat.
I'll
And your
ju-
Twitter handle is, again, it's at Bet Hannon.
Yeah.
I'll
Yep.
second what you were saying about custom fields and conditional logic. So I built a volunteer registration form for a nonprofit, and they had like 10 or 12 different jobs, and each job, when you select it, had an information field, and then other fields to select for their qualifications, and just 3 or 4 fields. And each time I added a new one, they'd come back and say, "Oh, can we add this one?" And it's like it gets confusing which conditionals you're in. So you have to very carefully check the field once you've done it. Check all the fields once you've done it to make sure when you select a option that the right fields show up, because it's
You
very
do.
easy.
Exactly. I go through, I make our, well, our folks, when we are doing some of those that have a lot of conditional logic, you have to go in and you have to select every single
Every
option.
single option, yes.
Know that it's all going to display properly. And I can't tell you how many, but here's the thing. Those Gravity Forum support folks are pretty good at this. So I've been like, I don't know, at least a half a dozen times, right? I've gone like, there's some bug in here that's not letting me do this, and I'll get, oh no, it's your conditional logic on this field, and I'm like, how could you even know that? But yeah,
Yeah, well, they've done it before.
it was exactly it.
They've seen it all, Bet. They've seen
Yeah.
it all.
They have.
There's
And-
also conditional logic on their confirmations and their notifications and their settings, and
Yes.
you can put conditionals into the to like MailChimp hookup. I mean, they get pretty extensive in what they can do.
The Stripe stuff too. And it's sort of like, once you start realizing that there are all of these ways that you can do conditional stuff, it just sort of becomes mind blowing at how you can really target things, really, really make things super precise. So.
But one thing I've learned to do is that on every contact form, I put a hidden field on it, or an administrative field. I forget which one it is, that says, when it submits a notification to me or to the admin, this contact came from this page or this form. Because if you got 3 or 4 forms and it just comes in from your website, it's like, where the hell did that come from? It's like,
Yep.
Yeah. But if you put a field on there with your dynamic tag that said source field, then it prints it right at the bottom of the field.
I just put it in the notification. Under the notification, I just put it in. Because we have over 120 client sites that we manage. So, I put on there. So stuff comes all the time. You can sometimes tell from the email where it's come from, but not always. And so, yeah, that's a really handy tool.
Right. The other one that's really helped is the PD, submit it. When you submit, it creates a PDF, the plugin that does that.
Yeah, grab the PDF.
Yeah, because my nonprofit groups really love that.
Yeah, that was one of our early forays into doing more complex things with Gravity Forms, was using Gravity PDF, and we were working with a group that was going to do a children's summer program, and they wanted the parent to be able to register up to 3 children on this form. But then they wanted to have a printed document that went with each child into the classroom. So the parent filled out all their stuff, then they put in stuff on each of the children. Then we took that, blew it all up, rearranged it. The child's information was at the top. Each child had a separate PDF. So child 1 and all of their info and all of the parent stuff. And then they made 3 different, as many PDFs as they had children. And then what the group did was take all the PDFs for a particular classroom or age group, and they put them all in a binder, right? But they were printing all that out still at that point. But putting all that together, rearranging it on the thing, displaying it with their logos, and yeah, it was really.
Well, we had a form for participants in sort of a field event, and they had to sign a release. And so if you put a signature form on there and then sign it and then print it to or submit it as a PDF, then the event coordinator gets a copy of the PDF with a signature that shows that that person has signed their release. So then they're allowed to participate. And that was
Yeah.
that was like the the thing that really otherwise they had to show up and sign PDFs and had a long line of people signing releases. It's like, oh, crazy. So now they get them before they even get there.
Yep. Oh, that's great. And there's the guy that does entry automation and fillable PDFs is coming out like any day now with legal signatures. So all of these things are, they're good enough. There's good enough for horseshoes and hand grenades. My grandfather used to say, right? They're good
Yeah.
enough for some applications, but when you're doing something that's like something HIPAA, or you got you're buying a big ticket item or something like that, and you need a signature, a contract of some kind. You need a legally binding signature with all of the IP field, the tracking. If you've ever done a DocuSign document, you know how there's at the end there's all that extra data on the last sheet of, like the audit trail. And so this will have an audit trail in it, and we're really excited to do that with the water district that we work with in California that we do accessibility stuff for. Is they have a system where people trade their water rights, but that's a property thing. You have to have like legally binding signatures for that. So we're real excited to put that together for them eventually. So.
Yeah,
That'll be
Trojan.
complex.
Go ahead.
Well,
I think what's coolest about this presentation you've done, Bet, is just it lets me know there's so much more that I'm not using on Gravity Forms, and so much more it could do. And pretty much it's going to be the solution for anything. If I just dig around and look at some of these apps that work with Gravity Forms, I'll find anything I need.
there's a lot for sure. I'm not sure I would use Gravity Forms for pretty more heavy duty e-commerce, right? If you were going to do stuff with physical products, I think I'd.
Even with digital products, you run into issues, especially with PayPal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are some times where gravity is not the answer, but I'm with you. I'm kind of like, I can see ways to fit it in a lot of things, right? Yeah. So, but once you know that those things are out there, then, and you kind of can begin to think about how to send data. Then when you are working with a business, maybe that's not the primary thing, but you can start asking questions about their processes and their digital information, management, and you can offer some solutions that really can be put together, fairly, I wouldn't say easily always, but it's like they can be done and accomplished. It's not going to cost them $10,000 probably, but
Right. You don't need to have special coding.
for a lot of it.
Right. Roger, did you have a question? I saw your hand up, then it went down.
Yeah, I was just trying to be polite and not just butt in. I just wanted to say thank you. It's because it's just, you just opened my eyes to all the possibilities. I'm currently working on a website, and I need to figure out a scheduling system for this person. And I was thinking somewhere on the horizon, I have to figure out how I'm going to do this scheduling. But Gravity Forms is already installed on the site. So there's my solution.
Yeah. Is it a scheduling thing where somebody has to pick some choices and then you're worried about people double scheduling?
They currently are using an external source. Like in order to do the scheduling, the user has to leave the website and go somewhere else and do it. And so all I'm thinking is that after seeing your presentation tonight, that there's probably going to be a Gravity Forms solution.
I don't know, not always. When we built out a scheduling thing in the last 6 months, and we ended up using Calendly and then redirecting people back to the website to fill out more of the information needed for the reservation system that we created. But
you can embed the Calendly forms right in your website. You don't have to send them to Calendly.
exactly.
I used it for a
That's-
while. I used it for a while, and now I'm using Book Like a Boss. And they, even though it's a third party, they stay on my website because I've embedded the forms.
Yeah.
And
So I switched over to Traft, TRAF, I think it's FFT, because they let me brand my emails. So all my emails come from my domain now. And they were the only system out there that let me do it.
Okay.
yeah, building
Okay,
a
and you have to balance it out, right? And if it's a small shared server hosting account, you may not have the resources to do some things that you would on a different kind of hosting. But thinking about performance, but yeah, no, I haven't done much scheduling with gravity forms.
But again, back
But
to
you
my
can think about
original
it.
point, I just wanted to say thank you for opening my eyes to possibilities. There's a whole bunch of possibilities out there that I was not aware of. So thank you.
You are welcome. You're welcome.
So there's a lot of good info in the chat. So if you want to just go ahead and make sure you save the chat. So for all those who are like chat lovers. It's great.
Well, I know this is one people want to review later when we have the video up. So I'm sure it'll be put up. Bet or Doug, which of you are going to be putting the video up?
I'll put the video up. It's still
You might want to
recording.
grab that link to the slide so you have that. And
Yeah, I have that. It's in the
because
chat. That's
people
good.
don't get to see this chat in the.
Yeah.
Right.
They miss out on that.
Yeah.